5 years into the second millennium after the destruction of the temple. I was 30.
There was a party near Foster and Sheridan at a warehouse, a cavernous room with bright orange square paintings, blue twinkle lights, paper-mache giant owls and panthers, mannequins dissected and lit up with fake flowers spilling out. And there were a bunch of dominatrixes and their submissives making their presence known, and about as many queer anarcho-punks as Chicago could muster, plus the girls from Total Recluse who were on tour from Olympiad. I had promised Eva I would play a song on my accordion. My sister had just gotten into town that day. There was some kind of physicist convention, and her school had flown her up from Boston. I assumed she would want to stay in and get some rest, but when I told her about the party, she produced a red sequin dress from her suitcase.
I was hoping there'd be a party.
She tried to convince me to wear a pink sparkly dress that reminded us of Barbie, but I wasn't feeling it. We laid on my bed playing with the sequins and sparkles and laughing for about an hour before we got dressed and made our way to the L train. It was one of the first really warm days of spring. It didn't hurt too bad to walk. Eva greeted my sister with a big hug and introduced her to a group of art school kids who I had recently decided I couldn't interact with anymore. Too much edgy irony. I seemed really excited about my sister though and took her around introducing her to people, saying,
Hey, this is Maggie's sister. She's a geophysicist.
I stood near the door watching new people come. A girl with bright blue hair and a silver mini dress stomped in wearing big patent leather platform boots, glowering out from under her blunt-cut wig bangs. I judged her for being too into her image. We get it, you're pretty. It's easy to be that way when you're skinny and white navel-bodied. You don't have to be so proud of yourself. One trans guy showed up wearing just a binder and a pair of 80s short running shorts, his belly poking out in between skinny, hairy legs, sticking out of tube socks and dorky tennies. He made me smile. I'd never seen someone out in public with bound breasts but no shirt. It meant he felt safe. That made me think about whether or not I felt safe and why I was standing by myself, watching. Just as I started wishing I hadn't come, a woman entered and smiled at me like she was glad to see me. I knew I recognized her, but I couldn't remember how. I watched her, looking for clues. She looked Jewish, with big brown curly hair and olive skin, arched eyebrows, wearing a green dress that looked dramatic and edible with her body swelling inside it, the fabric casual and intimate against her skin. She sipped her drink through a little straw, smiled with sparkly eyes, but she didn't talk to anyone, just stood there looking kind of special, like someone too important to be approached. I wanted to approach her, but I couldn't think of anything to say, so I just watched. My sister still hadn't returned when Eva asked if I was ready. I grabbed my accordion and stood next to the stage, waiting for her to introduce me.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for my very best friend, Natalie.
The microphone was barely off, and a couple people clapped. Most just continued their conversations. I adjusted the mic stand's height. I said thank you and played the opening chords. There was my sister, over in the corner talking to the drummer from Total Recluse, who had just broken her hand. They had to cancel the rest of their tour. I wished they were playing and not me. I started singing. The microphone was slipping, dropping away from my face. I tried to crouch down. I stopped for a moment, tightening the screw. Tried to start again, messing up my finger range. A car outside zoomed by, so loud I couldn't hear myself. So I stopped and looked out of the room. A few people were watching me. Some of them seemed kind of curious. I made eye contact with a straight-looking guy with a goatee who looked like he felt sorry for me. I shrugged. It didn't matter. I got off the stage without saying anything, and nobody said anything to me. I tried not to make eye contact as I walked toward the door, unsure what to do with myself. Everyone seemed absorbed in their own thing, a pretty trans girl arguing expressively with her hands, a fat femme sticking a finger in her mouth to blot the edges of her lipstick, while 3 little gay dudes watched. A red-headed woman with a glued-on beard hitting a wide-hipped boy with a leather paddle. Show off, I thought. I was surprised to see the woman in the green dress, dark, pillowy curls on the sidewalk outside, warm wind tossing her hair. She nodded at me, her smile smoldering, and she reached out and took my hand, and she laughed. Her hand was strong and soft, and I shivered as she rolled through me, just whoosh, like she'd always been there. I opened my mouth and closed it again because I still didn't know what to say to her. Who wears that color of green?
It's about that time.
She asked, like we were in on a secret together. And I nodded because I felt stupid, that I didn't know what she meant. She said. And we began to walk east toward the lake, and I noticed that I wasn't feeling any pain in my hips. Walking felt easy, and the incessant squeak of my leg had stopped so that this moment could be perfect, so I could almost forget myself, pretend I was someone almost like me, but just a little bit different in significant, world-altering ways. Someone who falls in love with strangers without speaking to them. Someone worth falling in love with. We walked like we owned the city, the air the exact right temperature, our strides perfectly in sync, until we crossed an intersection against a flashing red hand and a pair of headlights bore down on us, honking. We had to run, and I fell into my lopsided skip hop that I had learned in elementary school. She smiled, and so I smiled, and the movement of our bodies made us feel like equals. It was dark. Not many people were out. I wondered how late it was and if my sister was missing me. You know, she said, like we were in the middle of a conversation.
If you don't believe in time, then it doesn't exist.
You're so awesome! Wow, I never feel like this. I'm always trying to make other people live in my reality. I'm always trying to explain myself, and here you are just like showing me how it is, like you already know everything. Where did you come from? She laughed and shook her head and looked at me like, you dork. I got quiet again. Why did I do that? Why do I always do that? If I didn't need to question the moment, then I could just stay in it forever. I could follow the feeling and keep opening into it forever, and every single thing could just emerge from that one infinite moment, and when I died, it could feel just like an orgasm. And then we walked under an overpass, and I noticed a dirty sock that looked like it was smeared with shit. And then I smelled it. And then I saw a sleeping bag with a person in it, and suddenly the awfulness of being alive was upon me. People have to sleep and shit on the street, and I suddenly weighed 1,000,000 pounds, and my body almost fell apart, and I remembered how fat I am, and that I have a fake leg, and that I have never really been in love with anyone, and that's why I always think I'm in love, just because I feel connected to someone for a moment. And it was really late, and I had abandoned my sister, and I was still too stubborn to own a cell phone. I was still holding her hand, which felt sweaty and limp, like a weird piece of putty. I was afraid to look at her, to confirm what I knew, that this was all a sham. She didn't like me. She didn't even know me. Maybe she even thought I was someone else. Every step made the tightness in my hip more painful. I felt aware of my limp, of trying to match her steps, of trying to perform something like normal. I felt my belly jiggling. I heard my breath coming out ragged. She didn't look at me, but she relaxed her gait, and we continued east toward the lake, passing brick apartment buildings with little grassy courtyards. a liquor store, an office supply store, a real estate agent. As we passed the last row of buildings that blocked out the horizon, the lake came into view, and a spasm of lemonade pink light stretched itself across the water's skin. She released my hand.
We're here.
We're here. And her voice reached me in that terrible little hole I had fallen into. Whatever I was going through in my head, that wasn't what was going on between us. She did like me after all, and now I wanted to touch her again. Now I really wanted to know her, everything about her. I reached over and I felt her fingers all soft and wrinkly, and her padded palm in that place where the thumb connects. I moved around like I didn't know how to hold a hand, and she stayed soft and let me, until finally I situated my hand, and I held her loose with fingers entangled. The air was so warm. The dark sky was beginning to glow indigo and brighten where it merged into the lake. Then a few streaks of yellow gold burst into view, and she squeezed, and that's when I saw them, the great birds at the edge of the water. They were so big. It took me a few more breaths, a few more eye blinks before I could accept what I saw. There were 10 of them, a minion. And they were much bigger than us, maybe 8 feet tall, with long, thick, graceful necks that they rubbed against each other like lovers. They were glowing in the first rays of light, a shiver of silver outlining their gray-blue bodies, seal-like, otherworldly. See if you can feel them. There was a sound, high and constant. A hum that emanated from them. It bent the air. It felt thick to breathe. What are they? I asked. They're thin, wavered through my body, disintegrating me into vibration. The cells of my skin, my internal organs, began to pulse in response to their sound, and then I detected another pulse, an electric current transmitting from the stranger's hand into mine in odd rhythms. Those are the Caribbeans, she said.
Those are the Caribbeans.
And then I could feel the pattern in the pulse, the longing to open, and that edge where the fear of dissolving pushes back. Pulse, pulse, psst, psst, psst. Pulse, pulse, psst, psst. I felt the land